And we are live. Sir, Ben Orenstein, thank you so much for joining me today, man.
Thanks. Psyched to be here.
Indeed. So for those of you watching, welcome to day 6 of MicroConf On Air. You're either watching this at microconfonair.com or you can head to youtube.com/microconf. If you want to ask questions of Ben Orenstein, whether it's about his MicroConf talk from last year or really anything that's been going on with him, you can head to microconfconnect.com and get into the Slack group there. We have a MicroConf On Air channel, and folks are pumping thoughts and questions in there. Before we get started, thanks so much to Basecamp and Stripe. They are our annual partners, headline partners this year, and as always, we love working with them. My guest today, as I said at the top of the stream, is Ben Orenstein. He's the co-founder of Tuple, co-host of the Art of Product podcast. And, we like to structure the discussion a little bit around, especially if folks have spoken at MicroConf, around their talk. Ben's talk last year was called Idea to Validation to Launch the First 365 Days of Tuple. And that went live in the past couple days on that MicroConf YouTube channel that I mentioned earlier, youtube.com/microconf. We also, I believe producer Xander sent me a note that all of the MicroConf 2019 videos, that's Growth and Starter and Europe, are all now available on our YouTube channel. So we've switched. We made a decision in 2020 with the expansion of MicroConf and trying to bring more stuff to entrepreneurs, especially earlier stage folks who have a tough time perhaps getting out to in-person events, that instead of selling our videos, that we are, essentially letting them go live for free. And you can head over there and check those out. Ben, have you watched your talk since we pushed it live?
I actually haven't. I didn't know it was live. I have been on a Twitter break, so maybe you pinged me there or something, but otherwise I was not aware.
Yeah, I think we mentioned you or something, but it'll be good. Do you often go back and listen to your podcast or watch talks in order to improve?
I do listen to my podcast sometimes, which feels a little bit weird, but it's like my memory is so bad that last week's episode is like still, like 20% new to me somehow. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we were dealing with that.
Yeah.
So I listen to the podcast semi-regularly. I don't watch many of my talks. I'm actually not sure I've seen like a whole talk I've given before on video.
Yeah, I do listen to the podcasts that I do, and I find that it helps. Sometimes it's agonizing, but it helps me improve. Helps me realize weird speaking patterns, or I should have asked this question, or whatever. Talks, I do have to 1.75 them. I just cannot sit through a full 45 minutes of me. But I have learned a ton watching them, so it's a recommended discipline.
Yeah, I've gotten over the listening to myself thing. Like that makes everybody uncomfortable at first, I think, but I'm now used to that. But the watching myself is kind of a new level of discomfort. I think that I might not be quite ready for it.
Yep. Yeah, totally. So we have some comments. We have some questions. I'm going to kick off with the first comment we got in MicroConf Connect. It's from Ken Wallace. He's at Bodicus on Twitter. He said, "This is still one of my favorite talks. In my notebook during this talk, I wrote these things." And these are paraphrases of what I got from what Ben said, perhaps not word for word quotes. One thing he said is, "It is impossible," he's quoting you essentially, "It is impossible to ship early enough. Live frugally, set money aside, build your savings so someday maybe you can be your own first investor. Your early projects are just your practice companies and practice products. Ask for what you want." Any of that ringing a bell with you?
Yeah. I'm pleased that I'm pleased that I think I still agree with all of that advice. Yeah. Maybe that means I'm not growing enough, or maybe I managed to get a couple of things that are lasting.
Yeah.
But I think that also kind of rings true. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned before we started recording, you're hanging out in your apartment. COVID is on your mind, and I think it's on a lot of our minds, and different folks are dealing with it in different ways. But what impact has that had? I'm curious. I think both personally and business wise.
Well, business wise, our app is a tool that's used by developers when they're working remotely. So the market for the number of working at home developers probably went up 500 times in the last couple of weeks. So we saw a pretty huge surge in inbound interest, which is nice on the business is doing well side. presents its own stress, of course. It's like it's exciting and it's good, but now it's also just like, well, everything just got turned up to 11 in terms of work requirements. And so before we had like nice growth and things were going well, and it felt pretty calm. And now it's like, okay, the growth is coming fast enough that like suddenly there's like so much work to do, and our little team, which is like 3.2 people at this point or so, is it's starting to feel like, wow, there's too much now. So it's a good and bad, I would say, on the work front.
Yeah, good problem to have, but still a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember hearing you talk about, and other people, but like you talking about like with drip, like always feeling like, oh, I need to keep adding this person here and like turn this revenue into another person and scale up this part. And I'm feeling that now for the first time. Before it felt like we were able to like build things and make stuff and even like be manual and keep up with everything. And now the growth has like changed dramatically. And so it's like, well, I used to just be able to do all the sales stuff. And now every time I open up the thing, it's like, there's a half a day of work in here and I can't do the other things that I want to do and need to do. And so I think we're hitting the scaling thing, which is cool. It's better than hitting the no one wants to buy our thing. But it's like a whole new set of challenges for sure.
Yeah, and it's something that I don't think a lot of us feel it coming, even though we know that it will if we scale, because you can tell yourself, I just can't imagine that the three of us can't just grow this to $1 million company or a $2 million, or maybe we'll hire one person to get there. And then as you start getting there, exactly what you're experiencing, it's like, no, now I get it. Like I could work 70-hour weeks and not be able to keep up with this.
Yep. And it's also the thing that's really where I notice it's really impacting is just in being able to prioritize the things that are most important. Like I think, and maybe I'd actually be curious what you think on this. Like, I think the best thing I can do, like my kind of zone of genius thing, is actually around product management. So like determining like what we should build next, how it should work, how it should look, that kind of thing. And that feels most important to me, I think. But like I also am handling sales, which is now like becoming an increasingly large commitment. And that is not zone of genius stuff for me. Like I'm okay at it, but I'm doing a lot of shuffling papers around and like filling out the vendor system to get paid and following up on invoices and stuff. It's like, that doesn't seem the most high value.
And reasonably easy to hire if the product is, I'm getting the feeling that the sales job is not that complicated. It's just a process, right? It's you do the demo, people generally know what the tool does. They have a few questions and then it's not like selling, I don't know, an ERP system or something, right? Or a Salesforce or something.
Right. And I'm actually basically never selling. It's more like large companies like, we want to buy 20 licenses of the enterprise plan. And it's like, great. So I'm not trying to convince anyone to do it or like often even negotiating much really, aside from like certain contract clauses. So it's more like just walk through whatever their process is basically, which is always involved and kind of annoying. So I think it's definitely the kind of thing that someone else could do.
Yeah. And that's like, I think inside sales is generally like when we were in construction, there was outside sales and inside sales, and outside would go out and meet with the customer and they were really building the relationships and stuff. And then they had a contact called inside sales and they did all the admin it's more than that, but it's what you're saying. It's paper shuffling and it's kind of getting things done internally. You're doing both right now, but yeah, that definitely feels like something that, because product is more, you hiring someone to run your product at this point would be very, very hard and would be a big risk, right? Whereas you hiring someone to do sales right now is much more of a no-brainer. I'm curious, so COVID is, for better or worse, is obviously, increasing revenue. I mean, it's a plus for the business. Personally, how is it taking a toll on you?
Yeah, 100%. Health stuff is like my most like vulnerable area, it feels like to me, in terms of like mental response to it. Like my mental response to most risks is like pretty measured, I think. Something about health risk to me and people I love is like extra scary. And so I've been struggling mentally with that part. And it's also, of course, like there's more isolating happening. And I'm super extroverted and I love spending time with people. I like being in person with them. And so that bit's been tough as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, thanks for showing up, even though it's
Yeah.
not always fun and easy. But I do appreciate it. We have a ton of comments, thoughts, questions. The first question is from Mason Hensley, and he said, I'm curious about Ben's thoughts on Screen.so, which is
Mm-hmm.
really the first competitor that we've heard about, for Tuple. And I don't know, thoughts may not be the right question, but obviously I'm sure it's on your radar.
It's on our radar. Yep. Saw it happen. Interested to see what happens there. Don't have like exactly a fully formed response on that yet. It wasn't surprising. Like it was honestly a bit surprising how long it felt like we had this sort of clear space in front of us, or it was like, it doesn't seem like almost anyone else is coming after this market right now.
I've said that a few times on my podcast. I was like, someone's going to do this eventually. Like, this is a nice space,
100%.
Yeah.
And so like, it was not a surprise that day came eventually where someone's like, oh yeah, there's a competitor. Totally. So not shocking. I mean, still it's a stressor as well.
Sure.
But like the good news is the market just got enormously bigger. That's kind of good. To say that there's enough to go around is an understatement, I would say. And I think we also feel motivated. It's having someone else do something is like, it makes you, maybe lights a little bit of fire. And so I feel like we're all kind of like, all right, well, we have to keep kicking ass.
Yep, that can be good. Forrest asks, what advice might you have for someone who built a SaaS app as a side project for themselves and has been using it for about a year, but is absolutely petrified to put it out in front of anyone else for fear of rejection? Just thinking about it causes a bunch of fear and anxiety for such a person. Of course, definitely not me asking for a friend.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. To me, this is not even a business question. To me, this is why is that so scary? What in your past made that so scary, or what's the real risk here? This feels like actually a Sherry Walling question, or like a therapist question.
It's a mindset question.
General, because I'd be shocked if this were if this business thing, this SaaS app, were the only place this sort of reared its head. And so I would think about trying to get to the source with someone that's trained at helping you unpack those thoughts and analyze them.
Yep. No, I think that's good advice. Totally coincidentally, about 2 hours ago, I was on Twitter and I had this thought about shipping and the shipping muscle, the muscle of learning to do it and the fear behind it. And I did spit out like a 4 or 5 tweet storm that basically was like, here are the fears that I often feel, or that a lot of us feel when we ship, and here's why, and here's what I think you should do about it. And what did I say? Doing things in public creates opportunity, but it's scary to do so, and blah, blah, blah. So that's more of a stitch it on a pillow type tweet. That's not going to fix it for you, but it is funny that this is just such a common thing, right? It's such a common thing for all of us whether it's shipping software, whether it's shipping your info product, a blog post, a book chapter, a live stream, a MicroConf talk, like all of these things are so scary, especially the first couple times you do them. And I find that the more I do them, like the first live stream I ever did, I was just terrified, And even though you and I have both done dozens and dozens of talks in front of hundreds of people, it's different. Live streams, for some reason, at least for me, were different. And I was really scared to do it. And I'm glad that producer Xander forced me to do it. And now I'm like much more comfortable, and it's just, nice. That's almost what I would say. It's like, once you get over it and you do it, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It just becomes less of an event that you run away from.
Yeah, I would say one of my life philosophies that I believe very deeply is in the plasticity of human brains. So just because you react a certain way or feel a certain fear to a given situation right now does not mean that it has to be like that. And with effort, you can change just so much about your personality and how you deal with things.
Absolutely. Growth mindset, right? Versus fixed. Mike Lawler asks, he says, I'm wondering if Ben has tips for launching an info product. For folks who don't know, you've launched several info products in the developer space. He says, I'm working on one similar to refactoring Rails. It's Postgres on Rails, but I don't have near the following that Ben has. My approach so far is to write a really good conference talk and give it at meetups, hopefully one day, and submit it to as many conferences as possible. What else can I or should I do? What do you think?
That sounds good. I don't know if Adam Wathen's talk has been put up on the channel yet.
Yes. All the on the MicroConf talk.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe that's probably still on its way then. We're working on those right now. Yeah.
All right, cool. So Adam is better at this than anyone I know. And so I would defer to his advice, but I can kind of give you the TLDR, which is be useful on the internet. So conference talks is good, although sometimes conferences are rather competitive. So you might actually have a hard time getting the talk in there. But if you make an incredible 6-tweet thread on some useful Postgres thing that Rails developers are going to find useful, and then you do that once a week, and maybe turn some of them into blog posts, and or have a podcast, or kind of, I think the medium is actually not super important because it's kind of more like what you're going to stick with and do regularly. But just that basic idea of like, how do you deliver lots of value to people for free in a place they want to consume it in a way you can keep up with, and then eventually, sell them something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. And producer Xander just slacked and said that Adam's talk is live. So
great.
YouTube.com/MicroConf and search for Adam Weiland if you want to watch that talk. It was a very good talk, you're right, on this topic. Mm-hmm. Stefan has a question for you. He says, in terms of idea validation, did you choose to work on Tuple because of the big hole left in the market by the acquisition of Screen Hero? What I mean is, if that didn't occur, do you think you'd still be creating a startup, and how would you validate the idea?
Hard to say. The lack of a really good option was a big reason that idea got bumped to the top. But there were other factors, like the fact that it was a tool for developers, which is an audience I already had access to, and also I felt like I could make a good product for them because I understand them because I am one. So the combination is what really made it become number one. If there had been an awesome version out there that I was using and loving, I probably wouldn't have started, I think. But I don't know what I would have done instead. And validation. I think there's been a fair amount. I think there's a lot said on validation on the YouTube channel, and also in some of my previous talk, I believe. So you can check out those.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Nick from Dentally says, as a young product, how has Tuple approached enterprise sales versus self-sign up? Was it something that was planned or worked as you went as large customer requirements became evident?
Yeah, much more of the latter. And in fact, in the beginning, we just told people no, basically. We're like, sign up with a credit card. And they'd be like, we want SSO. And we're like, sorry. And we would just sort of push people away. Anyone, and like, paying with POs or negotiating contracts, we just said no to in the beginning. Because we felt like we needed all our focus on building a great product. And then over time, the interest went up and up, and sometimes the numbers started to go up and up, and it was like, do we really want to say no to this, or do we want to maybe build single sign-on? So we built single sign-on actually in response to basically a dream customer came along and said, like, we're interested in using this. SSO is 100% a deal breaker. What do you want to do? And I was like, guys, I think we should build SSO. So we did, and actually, they just onboarded this week, so that's paying off, which is nice. But also, it opened us up to a lot of other enterprise deals. But yeah, we just kind of have slowly. Some of it, honestly, has been a mental shift for me because I'm a developer. I don't love doing the sales thing. Inefficiency drives me crazy in a way that doesn't other people. So like filling out the same security audit for a bunch of people and like getting asked questions that I already documented on the on the website and all that stuff just like kind of makes me cringe a bunch. But I'm trying to grow up a little bit and just like tough it out. And I'm also trying to think like, okay, I don't like doing this, but that doesn't mean Tuple shouldn't do this. Mm-hmm. This just means I shouldn't do this. So I'm trying to just kind of change my mind around it.
It's a really interesting question. So many of us want to start an app that's self-serve, or that we don't have a sales process, or certainly that we don't have an enterprise sales process for all the reasons you've described. And I think that's the beauty of being, self-funded or indie funded, is that you have the control and you can make the decision of, man, yeah. I just don't want to do this. And I do want to constrain the business. And I've seen entrepreneurs do that, and that's okay. Right. Mm-hmm. If you really wanted to grow slower and just never do sales, then just don't do it. But to decide, no, we do want to become, a 7-figure or an 8-figure business. And to realize either I need to, tough it out, or as you're talking about now, hire someone. I think that's it's just nice to be in control of that and not always saying, what will make us grow faster? And I have to do that, and feel like you're backed in a corner, because at a certain point, it's not fun anymore. Right. And it becomes more of a job. Like, we don't do this to back ourselves in a corner and do things we don't want to do, So it definitely sounds like a role that you should be firing yourself from soon. It seems like.
I can't wait. Actually, I kind of like it. Some of it's fun. It's and like it's cool to close a deal and then someone like writes you a big check or does a big ACH or a credit card charge. Like, cool. This is I like it when the money shows up at the end. That's a pretty fun game. But I do feel like actually like there's been this push and pull for us, which is we really don't want to build a lifestyle for ourselves that we don't like. That was clearly not the point. That's not what we started this, was to like create a job that sucks for us. But we also don't want to like hold the business back. And it's like we have a good product. People like it. I want a lot of people to be able to use it, especially now if they want to. And I want to I don't want to let my own personal proclivities like hold the company back. That affects my co-founders, that affects our customers. So trying to like balance these things and figure out, okay, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? And firing myself and such is becoming more of the playbook.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question from Andy Peters. He says, Ben, you make pricing sound easy. Could you talk, obviously he's listened to the podcast, Art of Product podcast, if you haven't checked it out. Could you talk about your journey to finding the right, and then he has that strike through and it says the current price. In your talk, you talk about how you raised your prices along the way to see what people will pay. Can you talk about the thoughts, emotions you had when raising prices? Did you ever have newer customers with higher prices than earlier customers? Did they ever know or care? Conversely, did you ever have to reach out to early customers and ask them to pay more now that you have a more set price?
Wow. How do I not ramble in an answer to that many questions?
Yeah, there was a lot. You want me to start re-asking them one by one?
No, that's cool. I pulled it up so I can bite these off one by one. So I'm glad I make pricing sound easy. I don't actually, I guess I'm glad. I don't actually think pricing is easy, but it sounds like you mostly have absorbed my philosophy around it, where you said, can you talk about your journey to finding the right strike through current price? And I think that's the right mentality, which is, don't try to think about a right price. Think about testing prices and think about testing them semi-regularly, because there's nothing like just getting real data from actual customers to answer these questions. A friend asked me, like, what do you think about pricing scheme A versus pricing scheme B? And I was like, I think you should test each one for a month and see what happens. It's just the best thing I've found for settling in on prices that make sense. I do want to do a quick brag, which is the other day I sent our pricing page to Patrick McKenzie, and he did not tell us to charge more. So
that right there, that's a win.
I was like, okay, I think that seems promising. And then so he said, can you talk about the
emotions when you're raising
thoughts
prices?
And emotions when raising prices? It is mentally a bit challenging. There were times when I was testing new higher price points where I would write the price and like kind of have to like close my eyes as I hit the send button, or like take a deep breath, or like I would write a price and then I would like backspace over it, make something lower. Like, no, do the one you want to do. Just try it, or like just change that 4 to a 5, or that, add something here, and just there was a mental struggle. I don't think that should be discounted. So gird your loins, I guess. Prepare yourself for it. Did you ever have newer customers with higher prices than early customers feel bummed or even churn? I don't think that ever happened. We eventually settled on our current pricing, and that's been that way for a bit. But I don't actually think we ever had someone say like, hey, I heard this person paid less. We want
pretty
that.
Unusual for that to happen. Yeah.
I think that's one of those concerns that maybe are not actually that common.
Right.
And then finally, did you ever have to reach out to early customers and ask them to pay more now that you have a more set price? We are just actually, I think we're just starting to bump into that. We have some early customers that were on annual plans that are starting to renew. I think basically so far we've just grandfathered them all. It's pretty. The amount of customers that are on the old pricing is not super high, to the point where it's concerning to us. So we've just been kind of leaving them alone.
Yep. Cool. Stefan has a question. He said, how much would you say having a non-trivial following on the web and a good reputation has influenced your startup's growth? If nobody knew about you personally, do you think anything would be different in the end? I've gotten this question before, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
I mean, it's all speculation, right? Because I can't split test reality, but I think it's pretty huge. From the beginning, we just had it was easy for me to get a couple thousand people on the mailing list. and it was easy to tweet a thing and then have a few thousand people see it. It was just made getting initial momentum, I think, dramatically easier. And also there was trust there too. So people would sign up and say, I've gotten so much value from your Ruby talks and from your podcast and whatever. And so I was excited to come try this now that I have a need for it. And so there was like sort of trust and rapport, I guess, that was built over time through these things. And so maybe we could have reached a similar level of success without that, but it feels pretty unlikely to me. I think the slope would have been a lot flatter as we struggled to sort of get our name out there and get people hearing about us.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like it's a really nice kickstart in the early days, especially the trust is almost more important than like the size of the audience, I feel. And it's if you can get those early adopters who trust you and are willing to give it a try, give you the benefit of the doubt, and then you start getting that feedback from them, you improve the product quickly, then word starts spreading. And I think trying to grow an 8-figure business or a high 7-figure business just on audience in the SaaS space is very, very hard. But you happen to have this amazing synergy with your audience being the exact customers who should use this, and most people don't. Even if I look back at the audience I had when I was doing HitTail, it's like only a portion of my audience cares about SEO, and that was an SEO keyword. So only a portion of my audience cared about email service providers when we launched Drip. Like it was a good chunk, but it was not 100%. And I'm not saying yours is 100% or anything, but I do think you had an incredible amount of synergy between those two that I think was helpful.
Totally. And even beyond just having a bunch of people sort of in the early days who were willing to listen to what I was saying, it also, because of that alignment of me being like my audience, I feel like it helped me build a better product and also do better marketing efforts. Like I had a good idea of what kind of things would resonate with people that would potentially buy our product, what podcasts I should go on, that kind of thing.
Right. Yep. Yeah, easy ask. And the moral of that story is not, oh, Ben had it easy because he had an audience and I don't. And so, whatever thought comes from that, it's, wow, Ben was doing shit for free for like 7 years and putting out podcast episodes and giving stuff away on Twitter and putting out really valuable, both free and then, some paid info content that was always more valuable than than the money you charge. Like that's the lesson to take from this.
Yeah. I think the right way to think about it is investing. It's like, it'd be great if you already had an enormous portfolio, but if you don't, and you want to one day have these benefits, start putting in what you can now. So it'd be great if you already had this audience, but just start putting useful stuff on the internet now. For me, I did it because I liked it and I enjoyed teaching and I enjoyed having a little bit of notoriety in a tiny nerdy niche. And so I was motivated to do it outside of thinking like, hey, one day I might start a business. But it was more like, hey, one day this might be useful. I don't know like exactly how or why, but like this seems like a positive asset to build up over time.
Yep. Yeah. Doing things in public creates opportunity for sure. Last question of the day as we're coming up on time. It's from, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Gezim. He says, Ben, I joined late, so you might have answered this, but what percentage of revenue is from enterprise sales? And feel free to answer that in, however vague you want to be. And then he asked, do you do any outbound sales like cold calls, or is it all inbound?
No outbound at all. Too much inbound to do right now. Maybe someday. Yep. And I tried to like a little bit, when things were calmer and didn't work that well for us. Like we have a trial. So like a developer will try it at a company and then sell their boss on it. And then it will often spread within the company. And then we sort of kick off a enterprise level discussion. I would say enterprise is probably still only like 10%, 15% of revenue, somewhere in there.
Nice.
It's ramping up. There's a lot more interest from bigger companies now because suddenly they're all sending the developers home. So I could see that ratio. I suspect that chunk will change, but it's not a huge part of the business yet.
Yeah, I would think without the COVID and the working from home, there are just more smaller companies who work remote, right? And the bigger companies tend to have big offices and have less of a need for it. So, but this is definitely a tectonic shift. We got to wrap. We're at time. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on. If folks want to keep up with you, you are Rook R00K on Twitter, although you're taking a break right now for a month or two, I think, but they can still follow you for when you get back. Tuple.app if they want to check out the app you're building, and of course, Art of Product podcast. Thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Thanks for joining us for day 6. Day 7 is tomorrow, and that is going to be making the most of surplus family time with myself, Dr. Sherry Walling, and 13-year-old Finn Walling. It will be in the house.
Nice.
Talking about some stuff. It's gonna be funny because that kid is hilarious. So youtube.com/microconf. Same time, same place, noon Central tomorrow. Thank you so much. See you then.